Lucille Ball passed away in 1989, with very few people there. The celebrity, who once attracted 44 million people each Monday night, lived her final years in utter isolation. The only people in her palaces were paid servants. Her kids did not come. Her well-known Hollywood pals also vanished one by one. What made the most adored comedian in America a recluse? Everything she built was destroyed by a family secret, money, and treachery. Her younger sibling moved to live with their grandparents. Later on, Lucille would claim that misfortune and loss influenced her upbringing. She was constantly haunted by one moment from that period. Immediately following her mother's announcement of her father's passing, a photograph fell from the wall. Then Lucille saw birds nibbling at the kitchen window, small gray sparrows. Despite being an odd detail, it ingrained itself in her memory. She was frightened of birds ever then. Though not as much as the real ones, she was reminded of them even as an adult by images, drawings, and other things. She refused to stay in hotel rooms with paintings or wallpaper of birds, regardless of how well known she got. She carried that fear with her to the very end. As everything were beginning to calm down, catastrophe struck once more. A backyard accident occurred when Lucille was around 12 years old. With a .22 rifle, her stepfather had prepared a secure area for target practice. He was cautious about the restrictions and only allowed the children to shoot at a field that was empty. A little neighbor child, just 8 years old, however, showed in when he wasn't meant to. The boy was struck by the bullet as he abruptly sprang up as another child took a shot. He was permanently paralyzed after it hit his spine. The relatives of the youngster won the lawsuit. Everything that Lucille's family owned, including their house, furnishings, and insurance, was gone. Crushed with shame, her grandfather never worked again. They had no choice but to leave town. According to Lucille, their family's lives was completely upended by a single accident. Another storm then arrived. When Lucille Ball was just 14 years old, she fell in love with Johnny DeVita, a local troublemaker who was 21 years old. Her mother was not pleased at all. She then made the audacious decision to use the little money she had to send Lucille to one of the best theater schools in New York City in the hopes of guiding her daughter away from the wrong path. It was a failure. Even though Lucille and Betty Davis were in the same class, their destinies couldn't have been more dissimilar. Lucille had trouble, but Davis prospered. There was nothing sugar-coated by the teachers. They told her straight out that she lacked the necessary skills. They even returned her mother's money, according to one account, and said that she lacked talent to Lucille. All she learned there, Lucille acknowledged years later, was how to be afraid. She was not broken by the rejection, though. A fire was started. In 1928, she returned to New York, determined to disprove everyone's assumptions and continue pursuing her ambition. She then developed rheumatic fever, just as everything was beginning to make sense. It was a powerful blow. She was hardly able to move for 2 years, much less perform. She spent the years that should have shaped her career sitting in bed, watching time pass. The majority would have given up. Lucille did not. She considered all the teachers had advised, but rather than giving up, she became more resilient. She returned to work more determined than before her recovery. She got a modeling job with designer Hattie Carnegie about the same period. It was a significant event. Despite his admiration for Lucille, Carnegie insisted on one significant modification. Her brown hair needed a blonde bleach. Lucille made no hesitation. Acting school never provided her with this type of instruction, so she transformed her appearance, learned how to carry herself in elegant clothes, and absorbed all that elegance had to offer. She was still dreaming of the theater, but modeling helped her hone her appearance, her movements, and her ability to hold an audience's attention without speaking. She returned to pursuing acting gigs after using that polish. They were not glitzy. During her 30s and early 40s, Lucille accepted anything she could. Background scenes, unmemorable leads, and slapstick humor. Despite appearing in more than 75 films, she never achieved stardom. Hollywood called her the Queen of the Bs, and she laughed about it by referring to herself as the Queen of the B+. It hurt, but no matter how hard she worked, the studios tried to put her in roles that didn't fit her as a flapper, glamour girl, comic sidekick. Despite the fact that the roles weren't great, they gave her something even better: experience. She learned every aspect of the industry, figured out what worked and what didn't, and gradually developed the skills that would one day allow her to dominate the screen not as someone else's star, but on her. On the filming of the 1940 film Too Many Girls, Lucille Ball got to know Desi Arnaz. He was an up-and-coming bandleader in Hollywood, and she was already a well-known actress. It clicked the instant they met. Desi approached her directly and inquired as to if she was familiar with rumba. After demonstrating a few movements for her, he remarked, "I can teach you quickly, but only if you take me out tonight." Lucille became enamored. She claimed later that she had never experienced love so quickly. Desi exuded vitality, charisma, and good looks. The sparks immediately caught the attention of the film crew. Even wagers on the duration of the partnership were made by some. Lucille couldn't keep away, but it felt too quick and intense to be true. She claimed that he somewhat alarmed her. She was even more drawn to him since he was wild and unpredictable. They continued the conversation with costly long-distance phone calls after the movie ended. "Just chatting to him cost her about $29,000, Lucille said. They were both in New York a few months later, in November 1940. Lucille was having a magazine interview as Desi was performing at a theater. She discussed their connection in that interview and stated that it would never work. But later that day, following a quarrel over Desi seeing another woman, she arrived at his house in a rage. A surprise marked the end of that disagreement. Desi made a marriage proposal to her. After only 6 months of meeting, they hopped in a car and went to Connecticut, where they eloped that evening. Numerous people were startled by their marriage. Interracial couples faced discrimination in Hollywood throughout the 1940s. On screen or off, studios didn't believe a Cuban man and a white woman could collaborate. When Lucille intended to make her radio show a television program years later, CBS objected to her insistence that Desi play her husband. They didn't think the crowd would agree, but Lucille refused to back down. She referred to their elopement as the most audacious thing she had ever done. According to her friends, it would not endure. "They gave it 6 months, she said. 6 weeks was how long I gave it." Trouble, however, began to appear shortly after the honeymoon. Desi and his band traveled a lot. He played performances late, and Lucille got up early for work. They hardly had time to meet. Then came the more profound problems. In the society Desi had grown up in, cheating wasn't considered a sin. He was only 12 when his own father took him to a brothel. Sleeping around hurt Lucille, but he thought it didn't imply he wasn't emotionally faithful to her. As his drinking issue worsened, the rifts in their marriage became apparent. She had been warned even before they were married. Women from all throughout the country were familiar with Desi. After only 4 years, in 1944, Lucille had had enough. Her divorce was filed. They fought all the time, loudly. Lucy, their daughter, subsequently talked about how much yelling she experienced as a child. But Lucille and Desi couldn't keep their distance even after the paperwork was filed. In what some referred to as a fire reunion, they reconciled. Their breakup and subsequent attempts were not the last. It started to happen in a pattern. But they had one more thought. They were estranged through their work. Perhaps they could stay together if they worked together. CBS sought to make My Favorite Husband, Lucille Ball's hit radio program, a television series in 1950. But they were taken aback by Lucy. Only if Desi Arnaz, her real-life spouse, played her husband on the program would she agree to do it, she stated. The network was not fond of the concept. Desi came from Cuba. He spoke with a thick accent. Furthermore, they didn't believe that American viewers would embrace him as the spouse of a woman who was exclusively American. Back then, while racial marriages were still illegal in many U.S. states and were rarely seen on television, Lucy and Desi put together a live stage act and toured the country performing comedy and musical numbers. The tour was so successful that CBS finally gave in and agreed to cast Desi. I Love Lucy was born, but it wasn't easy because CBS wanted the show to be filmed in New York, where most TV shows were produced. However, Lucy resisted leaving Hollywood. Television was irrevocably altered by the decision. Desi assisted in creating a novel method of filming in front of a live studio audience by utilizing 3 cameras simultaneously while collaborating with producer Jess Oppenheimer. That was dangerous. They needed to find a studio that could accommodate an audience while adhering to safety regulations. With CBS's assistance, they eventually located one in Hollywood and fixed it up. This filming technique had a significant impact. Instead of repeatedly stopping and resuming, it allowed actors to perform sequences in a play-like fashion. Additionally, it recorded genuine audience laughing and comments. Desi also demanded that they switch from the grainy tape that most shows at the time utilized to high-quality 35mm film. It proved to be a brilliant choice. The episodes were owned by Lucy and Desi through their business, Desilu, in exchange for a pay cut. One of the first significant success stories in syndication was I Love Lucy, as the programs were shot in such high quality that they could be rerun for decades. The performance ran into another problem in 1952. The second kid they had was conceived by Lucy. At the time, it was deemed improper to depict or even allude to pregnancy on television. The show's sponsor, Philip Morris, and CBS were not pleased. It couldn't be displayed on screen, they informed Desi. But Lucy and Desi held their ground once more. They didn't want to conceal her with props or steer clear of the subject entirely. The authors instead devised a creative solution. Never used the word pregnant in the story, but do mention her pregnancy. They used more gentle words like with child or expecting. In one instance, the French phrase enceinte was even employed. Review the script with religious leaders just to be sure. On the day Lucy gave birth in real life, in January 1953, 44 million people watched the program in which Lucy gives birth. Because no one wanted to miss a minute of the show, it is said that water use nationwide decreased during that time. I Love Lucy then became unstoppable. It ranked as the nation's most watched television program for 4 of its 6 seasons. Only 2 subsequent shows, Seinfeld and The Andy Griffith Show, have achieved this feat, as the show remained at the top of the ratings when it concluded in 1957. Lucy was named the Best Comedian Emmy winner. Oppenheimer and Desi were also Emmy winners. Ultimately, the program took home 5 Emmys and made television history. Long after it was over, I Love Lucy continued to attract new viewers. Reruns were shown all over the world. According to a 2012 survey, it was the greatest TV program ever. A Christmas program that was colorized attracted over 8 million viewers in a single night in 2013. The audience continued to laugh at Lucy and Desi's show almost 60 years after it started. Behind the scenes, the couple started Desilu Productions, their own business. It became the biggest independent TV studio in the nation in a matter of years. After spending $6 million to acquire RKO Studios, they started creating television programs such as The Dick Van Dyke Show, The Andy Griffith Show, and The Untouchables. It all began because 2 individuals wanted to remain close and had faith in what they were creating. However, Lucy and Desi had divorced by 1960. What followed took everyone by surprise. Lucy took control of Desilu after paying $2.5 million to buy out Desi's interests. There had never been a female head of a major Hollywood studio at that time. Many questioned her. They said that she was not a business leader but rather a comic. Lucy, however, disproved their claims. She was still appearing in The Lucy Show, but she was also managing large budgets, negotiating deals, making difficult executive decisions, and creating plans for the future. To handle reruns, she even founded a syndication company within Desilu, something that, at the time, no anyone was considering. In 1966, Lucy took one of her most daring actions. She gave her approval to 2 costly new television programs, Star Trek and Mission Impossible, that no one else supported. The shows were too costly, too hazardous, and too odd, according to her crew. Followed her instincts. She even mistook Star Trek for a show about famous people going on tour at one point. She was correct, though, and she saw something unique in it. Both programs went on to become iconic. As early as 1967, D Salad was once again flourishing. With a huge profit and a reputation as one of television's brightest thinkers, Lucy sold the company for $17 million. Long before all had happened, Lucy and Desi had taken another silent decision that would change the game. Despite CBS's request to film I Love Lucy live in New York, they refused to leave California. If they could shoot the show on 35mm, they would accept a pay cut. Everything was altered by that one choice. Reruns were made possible by it. It established the syndication business and turned I Love Lucy into a series that would continue to make money for many years. It's projected to have grossed over $700 million even now, more than 70 years later. Lucille Ball's career nearly ended in September 1953. It all began with a rumor. On a nationwide radio program, Walter Winchell, a gossip reporter, casually dropped one. He inquired while waiting for a story outside Lucille and Desi's home. The Los Angeles Herald-Express carried the enormous title, Lucille Ball named Red, in red ink that same day. It was quickly picked up by other papers. America's most popular comedian and the host of the most popular television program was now being dubbed a communist. This wasn't merely rumors. Being associated with communism might ruin your life back then. Both blacklisting and job loss were occurring. I Love Lucy was watched by 44 million people. Millions had been invested in it by the sponsors. And now everything was on the line because of something Lucille Ball had done over 2 decades before. It wasn't because she believed in communism that she had registered to vote as one in 1936. She took this action to please her grandfather. He was a workers' rights advocate and had reared her. Her goal was to maintain harmony among the family. However, that choice was now coming back to haunt her. She recounted everything in a meeting with a federal investigator. Despite her fear, she was honest. She added that she had never been a part of any commune. Yes, her name had been mentioned once. Back in the 1930s, someone claimed that a meeting had taken place at her home. Lucille, however, said she was unaware of it at all. Her brothers supported her as well. Neither of them claimed to have any political beliefs, they both said that it was all done to appease their grandfather. Desi Arnaz was moving around as Lucille struggled with the prospect of losing everything. So he did something. After inviting reporters to their house, he sat them down and explained the entire incident. Lucille was not and had never been a communist, he claimed. However, he didn't end there. He did something even more daring when filming the first episode of the new season, with reporters seated in the audience and suspense in the air. From the platform, Desi addressed them. He informed them that he had called someone and that they were on the line. After then, he raised the phone to the microphone. Jay was the one. The chief of the FBI was Edgar Hoover. And Hoover was rather explicit about it. The communists did not include Lucille Ball. Applause erupted from the audience. There was electricity in the room. Desi had proven herself in front of the whole nation. He did, however, have one more thing to say. He looked at the audience and added, "Now, I want you to meet my favorite redhead," his voice trembling. "Her hair is the only thing that's red. And that's not even real." The joke was a hit. The strain was released. Then, with tears in her eyes, Lucille took center stage. The crowd erupted. Lucille Ball won the title of Woman of the Year shortly thereafter. The White House asked her and Desi to dinner. She was almost ruined by the controversy. However, they had reversed it together with honesty, bravery, and a dash of humor. Following her protracted and agonizing divorce from Desi Arnaz in 1960, Lucille Ball had no intention of getting married again. She was 49, exhausted, and grieving. However, one night in New York altered everything. She was introduced to Gary Morton, a nightclub comedian, by a friend. At the time, Lucille was doing Broadway, and the date was at a pizza place. It was successful, but not particularly glitzy. Gary was Lucille's junior by 13 years. And he asserted that he had never seen I Love Lucy before. When it aired on Monday nights, he was always at work. Lucille was impressed, really. It indicated that her fame didn't enchant him. 11 months after they began dating, they were married. There weren't many people there, about 40. They left the chapel, however, to find a sizable audience waiting outside. They were applauding, "Lucy. Good luck." Later, Lucille wrote letters in which she was unable to contain her happiness. According to her, Gary was loving, witty, kind, and attractive. Fortunate to have found him. She passed away on the day after nearly 28 years of marriage. Wildcat, Lucille's one and only Broadway production, had just begun when they first met. It was expected to be a huge success, but things didn't work out as expected. Due to a snowfall that blocked the trucks transporting the sets on the highway, opening night was postponed. The program had a significant financial investment from her company, DeSilo Productions, and there was a lot of pressure. Although the part was significantly different from what audiences imagined, she played TV character Lucy Ricardo. In order to make her performance more reminiscent of her TV persona, Lucille began using jokes and facial movements. It made no difference. She received bad reviews, and her health suffered as a result of the stress. Sometimes the presentation had to stop because she became ill. Then, one April evening, she passed out on stage. They attempted to put the event on hold to give her time to heal, but the musicians' union insisted that they still needed to be paid. The play only had 171 performances before closing permanently due to excessive expenses. Her home life didn't improve throughout this difficult time in her career. Actress Patty Duke began dating Desi Jr., Lucille's teenage son, in 1970. Lucille was completely against Patty becoming 23. She was angry about her son's connection, despite the fact that she was 6 years older than Desi Sr. when they were married. She made severe demands of him. He would be expelled from the house, cut off completely, and out of his will if he didn't end it. For Desi Jr., his mother's primary concern was preserving the family's reputation. Stated that although she was severely hurt, she didn't harbor resentment. She believed that because of her noble intentions, she should not be viewed as a threat. She was dating other people, notably the actor John Astin, and dealing with mental health concerns on top of everything else. Nevertheless, Desi Jr.'s connection continued to ebb and flow. Then the controversy occurred. Patty married Michael Tell, and soon after, she became pregnant. Rumors began to circulate that Desi Jr. was the biological father, despite the brief 13-day marriage. And Lucille was appalled. She had worked hard for years to cultivate a clean public persona, and this was the last thing she wanted. Even though she knew Desi wasn't the father, Patty subsequently acknowledged that she had allowed others to think so. Although she didn't revise the tale, she also didn't lie. The press exploded. The hospital had to conceal her son's identity in order to deter reporters when she gave birth to him in 1971. The infant was visited by Desi Sr. and Lucy, the sister of Desi Jr. Not Lucille. Michael Tell was revealed to be Sean's biological father through DNA testing years later. However, Desi Jr. remained in Sean's life. They were connected in spite of everything. The harm was done, though. The news stories, the rumors, the drama. It turned out to be just what Lucille had feared. An uncontrollable controversy had tarnished her family's reputation. Lucille Ball's career was projected to decline once I Love Lucy ended in 1957. But Lucy had more to do. Not close at all. She returned in 1962 with The Lucy Show, a brand new program. Everyone was shocked to learn that it was even more well-liked than her last one. She made an unexpected move in 1968, when she was once again riding high. She left. After selling her business, Desilu, she had no desire to continue working on something she no longer owned. She therefore made a fresh start with a new series and a new production company. This is Lucy. It was a personal matter this time. She chose Desi Jr. and Lucy, her real-life children, to portray her children on the show. She stated that she wouldn't do it unless they were involved. The show touched on rock music, civil rights, and shifting social norms in an attempt to reach a younger audience. Was Lucy's effort to remain current in a world that was evolving, but by 1973, things were losing viewers. Lucy was considering a comeback to the big screen with Mamie, and her daughter Lucy had already left for a Broadway tour. She finally took a break from her dominance of television after 23 years, but Lucy had already begun to experience problems behind the scenes. Years prior, Vivian Vance, her co-star and best friend, had quit The Lucy Show. Vivian felt worn out. The lengthy journey from her East Coast home to the Los Angeles studio had exhausted her. She requested more funding and artistic input, but she never received it. Lucy's heart was broken as she left. "I can't imagine doing the show without her," she sobbed in private. Following Vivian's departure, the format of the show had to be completely altered. The years went by. Then, at the age of 74, Lucy did something unexpected in 1985. She portrayed a homeless character in the television drama Stone Pillow. She wanted to show that she was capable of more than just comedy. Ratings were good, and audiences paid attention. She was encouraged to try Life with Lucy, a final sitcom. The world, however, had changed. Critics criticized the show, which was terminated after only 8 episodes. It was the first time she had ever had a show canceled in the middle of the season. Lucy felt the blow of failure. She ceased making frequent public appearances. After Lucille Ball passed away a month later, she made her final television appearance at the 1989 Oscars, where she stood next to Bob Hope and received a standing ovation. However, in 1986, something quietly significant occurred. Her ex-husband and former co-star Desi Arnaz was dying of cancer. Although they had divorced decades earlier, their love had never completely faded, and Lucy frequently visited him. Their daughter Lucy later stated that their bond was still strong, and on November 30th, the day that would have been their 46th wedding anniversary, Lucy called Desi. He had trouble speaking. Lucy placed the phone at his ear. Lucy repeatedly assured him that she loved him. "I love you too, honey," Desi murmured, nodding. Then, with what little strength he still had, he wished her luck on her show. Desi passed away 2 days later with Lucy by his side. On April 18, 1989, 3 years later, Lucy was sent to the hospital due to chest trouble. Doctors discovered a rupture in the main artery of her heart. She went through a period where it appeared as though she would survive. Thousands of cards were received by fans worldwide, but 8 days later, she suddenly experienced back pain. She collapsed. For almost an hour, doctors attempted to revive her, but they were unable. In 1989, Lucille Ball passed away on April 26. Her age was 77. One of the world's greatest stars passed away. It lost a woman who had battled to be seen, loved, and remembered to the very end, but that was even more tragic.